Here we go. Mabuhay, Kamustika. Welcome. How are you? This is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. Seems like I haven't done a live stream for 6 months. I know it hasn't been that long. So I enjoy doing these. So let's get going. We have a lot to talk about here today. 29 ways to keep your Filipina from becoming Americanized. This live stream is about keeping your wife Filipinized, maintaining the attributes that attracted you to her in the first place. After I married my Filipina wife in May of 2015, I started watching YouTube videos reading about foreigners and Filipinas. I wanted to learn all I could about having a good relationship with them, and I decided to start a YouTube channel called Love Beyond the Sea about marital love with a Filipina. My wife is a Filipina, and she was my love I found beyond the sea. My intent is to encourage foreign men to marry a Filipina and help them to have a good marriage. I have many videos made, and I have a lot more I'd like to make. There's one particular topic that I didn't even become familiar with until after I married my wife, and that is that many foreigners are very concerned about the woman they marry eventually turning into some kind of monster, that is to say, become Americanized. It can probably be used synonymously with westernized. And please subscribe to Love Beyond the Sea and share videos to help encourage men find the love of their life, a Filipina, and to have a committed relationship with her. Some men have been victimized by this change in attitude. I intend to make a video called The Type of Filipina You Can Bring to America. It would be a video about traits to look for that would indicate the woman you are getting serious about is likely to be able to adapt to the United States and remain relatively unaffected by Western ways. That would make a nice addition to why you should bring your Filipina to America, which details some advantages for her being in America as opposed to the Philippines. Add this video to it, and you have a nice 3-box set available for the holidays for $9.99. Just kidding about that. Tonight, the scenario is that a foreign man is with his Filipino wife in America, and this could be any westernized country. He has heard about the phenomenon of some Filipinas morphing into the type of woman he didn't want to marry in the first place. Before we get into that, what do I mean by the term Americanized? We probably all have our own idea of that. That word has to do with an attitude, a bad one. Feministic, selfish, not committed, money hungry, divorcing her husband for his money. She'll want to party, cover herself with tattoos, maybe get muscular. The fear is that the sweet, caring, frugal Filipina you thought you married is now selfish, makes bad financial decisions, and doesn't want to cook for her husband or make a nice place for him to live in. Another way to look at it is that you'll marry a woman from a different culture, one that you find endearing, only to bring her to America, and slowly she erodes into the type of woman you are looking to get away from by seeking someone in the Philippines. I believe Filipinas make great wives, and a man should pursue them for marriage. But if someone is deeply concerned a Filipina could become Americanized, he might talk himself out of it. Here are some things you can do that might help prevent such a transformation, to be prepared to help her once she has arrived in America. And as we feel free, as we getting distracted here, as we progress through this video, feel free to comment on how you have dealt with this, or if there are other concerns you would have if you brought your Filipina wife to America. I will have the main points in the description box, and will summarize at the conclusion of this video. As I like to do in my videos, I want to be practical in how to do things and what to do, and tonight is no different. So there will be a lot of practical things listed, things that you can do, things that anyone can do. It's not magical, it's just practical. The more of them in your repertoire, the better. The less in your repertoire, then probably the more likelihood she is to become swayed and become Americanized. The foundational idea of all of this is that her husband is to take responsibility for a healthy and safe culture or environment for his Filipina wife. The points in this video are derived from this perspective. In my videos, I stress the importance of the man, the husband, in setting the tone for the relationship. Someone has to take the initiative, and I think it is best when that is done by the man. If he is aware of the danger of becoming Americanized, then he needs to ward off any possibility of this happening. And that's probably IRS or somebody calling me. I'm going to assume that the Filipina is not scamming the foreigner by marrying him. I'm going to assume that for the purpose of this video, the foreigner has made a good choice in a marriage partner. Why then would a Filipina start to look around? Why would her attitude start to change, assuming initially she wasn't planning on changing? It could be that she doesn't feel financially safe and she doesn't feel emotionally attached. Most of this video will deal with the second aspect of being emotionally attached, although the first aspect is important too. We should take full responsibility for the things that we can control. There is no way to shield or protect a Filipina from the society around her, but as a husband, there are many things that you can do to help her feel that her home environment is healthy and safe. Again, make comments here or in the archive if you have them. One thing you could do is tell her that America may not be what she thinks it is. The perception she has of America being some kind of paradise with readily accessible money and all kinds of spare time is one she might have when she steps off that plane. We know what it is like here, that have lived here, but a Filipina might have an inaccurate idea of what that's really like. When we were dating online and we got married in only 54 days, she already could tell that by me working 6 days a week, I had to stay on a regular schedule. Kind of had a regimented, lifestyle that had to stay the same after we were married because of how expensive it is here in America and how difficult it can be to have enough money to retire here. It is okay to tell her that working many hours is normal and even working into your 60s here. Some people work even after that. There are people I know, I don't know why they do it, but they have 2 jobs. And I think they only really need the one, but they have 2 jobs nonetheless. Good afternoon, Phyllis of Phoenix. Hi, James. There isn't always money to do fun things like travel, and budgets are often tight. She will likely need to find a job here, and some of her earnings may need to go for your expenses as a couple. Her work environment will expect her to be on time, not Filipino time, and her coworkers may not be as lovable as in the Philippines. America is a very liberal country in general, I think, so that is something you should make her aware of. Now, I am grateful to be born here and live here, but I haven't minced my words with my wife about what I do not like about this country, and I have said it more than a few times. America has become morally bankrupt. You have to always be concerned about your children since people are gunning them down in schools. We don't care about the unborn. We don't respect the elderly. It just seems like, society is getting more selfish. The weather, depending on where you live, could be a real eye-opener to your Filipina wife. This can make her wish she was somewhere else. My intent with this is to help her know that she might need to be prepared to work hard, bear some cold, uncomfortable weather, and deal with some rude people compared to the Philippines. There are plenty of homeless people here. I think that surprised my wife. A lot of poverty. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. She should be at least somewhat prepared to work hard and probably have a lot less spare time than she is used to. I remember when I was a teenager and the Marines came calling at our house one day and wanted to pick me up and take me somewhere to listen to their sales pitch. I was young and didn't know how to refuse them, so I said yes. They came barreling in the driveway in a van, scooped me up, and we went somewhere to watch a cool video of guys playing some fun-looking games. This, I was led to believe, was boot camp. I didn't trust them, so I declined. They wanted to show me an inaccurate picture of what I would be getting myself into compared to the harsher reality. I didn't want my wife to think America was some kind of Shangri-La, a paradise on earth. There are probably more negatives we talked about than that, but that's all I remember at this time. The more she knows about America before she lives here, I think the less likely she is to be disillusioned and try to find happiness somewhere else or with somebody else. Another thing, be upfront about your concerns about becoming Americanized. I have talked to my wife about how this country has a lot of women divorcing their husbands, women who aren't committed. It is so bad that many men refuse today to even get married or involved with a woman again. There is no divorce in the Philippines. There is no fault divorce in America. I get the impression women might be more committed in the Philippines, helping them to be more committed over here. They certainly are more helpful to the elderly in the family. I have talked to my wife about the need to be feminine, unlike many women here who want to have masculine characteristics and seemingly do masculine things. I saw them at the gym over the years. Shorter hair, real short, tattoos, trying to get muscular, bossy. Sometimes you have to look twice to see if it's a man or a woman. Ridiculous. Just be a woman. To me, that is a soft, caring, nurturing, supportive woman, not trying to be like a man. A lot of women want children without the husband, are willing to live off the government, don't take care of themselves, overeat, hit the bars like they are in their 20s again, refuse their husbands in bed, are wasteful with money, just want to have fun, and so on. I knew my wife was different when I married her, but I have felt the responsibility to warn her about the environment she is living in now, because I want her to know that I value her the way she is, and I don't want her to change her attitude and priorities. Being upfront about this shows her how important it is to me that she not gravitate towards being Americanized. Another thing you can do, and again, this is kind of the, if a person did all of these things, they wouldn't have to worry about, their wife leaving them, becoming tainted, with feminism or anything like that. The less you do, the probably more likely that is to happen. The more of these things, and I'll list them all in the description box and list them again at the end. The more these things you do, the better. How about learning about and appreciating the Philippines? It is possible you have good opinions of America too, which is why you didn't dissuade her from immigrating. See my video called Why You Should Bring Your Filipina to America, and I will link the videos I list here in the description box as well. At the same time, I would highly suggest you become familiar with the Philippines that your wife probably still loves and ordinarily likely wouldn't want to leave if she had her druthers. It's very beautiful in many places. So many of her family and friends are there, and she has been around friendly and hospitable people. Tell her about the things you like about the Philippines, and for sure, try to visit there now and then. That would really help. After I married my wife in the Philippines, we vacationed there the very next year. And in this year we went, and we'd like to go again in Christmas 2019, and then stayed there for New Year's in 2020. I didn't think it would happen, but the Philippines is kind of growing on me. It's where my baby is from, and where she is happiest. I have never tried to convince my wife that things are better here in America, whether they are or not. I always want to be respectful of the Philippines. This is a good thing. When I ask her questions about the Philippines and tell her what I like about it, that reinforces to her that she married a man who is worth keeping, who is investing himself in her and isn't trying to rescue her from her country. I'd like to believe this is the kind of man that she wants to be married to. My wife is aware of misconceptions some foreign men have about the Philippines and is happy to be married to a man who has good things to say about it. Another little thing, you can do, let me get rid of this here, is listen to Philippine music. I am someone who loves music in general and would have it on 24 hours a day if I could. And there are songs from the Philippines that I like to listen to. My wife has played some love songs for me to hear, and I've played them for myself. I don't know the words, but the songs sound good. They have good singers there. We have a setup here at home where she can use Bluetooth to play the music through a speaker so she can move throughout the house, upstairs and downstairs, and still listen to it. It helps to learn the names of some of her favorite singers, too. When she hears me listening to it, this reinforces that she married a man who accepts her and where she is from. And she won't get this from every man. Anything I can do to make her feel accepted and that she doesn't have to like America more than the Philippines will help her stay with me and stay grounded in her being Filipinized. How about eating Philippine foods together? Now, I'm really picky on food. I probably, before I got married, ate maybe, 6 or 8 foods, and that was good enough for me. But eating Philippine foods together, I think, is a good idea. Your wife will want to cook her favorite dishes for you. So this is something you would do well to try to like. This is important to her. Learning to embrace some of her foods is important to bonding you two together, which will prevent her from looking for something else from someone else, becoming Americanized. A lot of men lament their wives don't like to cook or maybe feel that being in the kitchen is demeaning. So relish, no pun intended, her cooking for you. We buy some food from Golden China nearby that's very good, and we do that when she's just too busy to cook. And this is just another practical thing to do. One of these days, we'd like to go to a Filipino restaurant. Unfortunately, the nearest one is about 200 miles away, somewhere near Kansas City. And we may go there someday, just eat and come back. I don't know of one any closer. It would just be fun to get out on the road a little bit. The more you can do together to build unity and respect for the Philippines, the better. Thank you, Rodney, for being here. I'm going to list these at the end and in the description, so you don't have to take notes. Your hand will get tired, so you don't have to do that. How about watching Philippine movies together? Did you know you can do this? When we were in the Philippines, we watched some shows and kind of looked forward to some of them every day. Some action shows. Their shows generally are romantic, but they have some good action shows. And, this is something you can do on YouTube while in bed or even television. I saw a YouTube video on how to get shows from the Philippines on your television. Can't remember who had that, though. My wife has her favorite YouTubers from the Philippines to watch, and I peep over her shoulder now and then. I certainly see no need to restrict her from doing the things she's always been used to doing. Doing things like this, along with other things on this list, help keep a Filipina from becoming Americanized. I usually can't remember the names of popular television shows or actors in the Philippines, but I'm sure my wife appreciates that I make the effort. Keep up with news from the Philippines. This is another little thing you can do. I like trying to keep up with news from the Philippines because that's where my wife is from and that's where her family is. We might even live there someday. That is where we have vacation twice and would like to go next year too, as I said. When I can ask my wife about something I read about President Duterte or the drug war, improvement in infrastructure, or impending bad weather, this shows my wife that I want to immerse myself in her life. To not do that could potentially give her the idea that I'm not totally into her. She could be hearing things from other women about her relationship with you that try to get her to doubt she made the right choice. So this is just another thing you can do that collectively help her to rebut those things that she may be hearing. Occasionally, I will ask my wife how her family is doing. It's another good thing to do. How her friends are doing. She's got a lot of friends, and ask her to let me see who she's messaging. It never hurts to ask, when Manny Pacquiao's next fight is, or if her favorite singer has a new song. Does anyone know how to spell Pacquiao the first time without making a mistake? Probably not. We just talked to my wife's family last night, just a couple of the children, and I think the 2-year-old can say Bob now. Hopefully they're not as afraid of me this time when we go back next year. Every time they looked at me, it was as if they saw a ghost, and would start crying. So since I shaved the beard, maybe that's one less thing they have to be afraid of. Another thing to be careful about, and I have heard this before from someone married to a Filipina, and it's not a good idea. Don't talk condescendingly about the Philippines. You could also say don't talk like, America is the greatest place in the world either, or that America is better from the Philippines. I would hope no one would do this, but if you do, it will take some positive reinforcement to overcome it. It is possible a man could say something his Filipino wife will be offended by that he didn't intend to be offensive. One of those things is the phrase third world country. My wife bristles at this when I say it, maybe because she thinks that I, believe something negative about the Philippines. But when I say it, I'm just referencing a term that she would be familiar with and I've heard before, and using it in context of what someone else might say. From now on, I should avoid using that term and maybe say developing country instead. I need to talk well about the good things about the Philippines, just like I would about the state or country I live in here. If she hears her husband say derogatory things about her country, it cracks the door open a little bit to not work as hard as she can to be a good wife to this foreigner husband. How about another one? Praise values that oppose becoming Americanized. This is similar to the first item. Her husband is responsible to make a healthy and safe culture or environment for her. If I like my wife's femininity, I need to tell her that. I need to, tell her what I like about that. If I want her to be committed to me, then I first need to make it abundantly clear that I am committed to her. I have a video about that. I will link 14 ways my Filipino wife knows that I am committed to her that you might want to see. If I want her to retain the virtues and characteristics that caused me to marry her, then I think I should be regularly reinforcing that by telling her how much I value that. Some other guy could tell her about what he likes about her too, but she must hear it from me more often than anyone else. If I don't want her out partying and drinking, then I shouldn't do it myself. If she is hardworking, I need to notice that and compliment her on that. Anything she does well. The video called How to Praise Your Filipino Wife illustrates the need to recognize her accomplishments. If she is frugal and you like that, then let her know you like that. Be a responsible man. The men who might try to get in her ear will have a hard time competing against you. Work hard to take care of her needs. From what I can tell, a Filipina doesn't immigrate here to become rich. Like most women, they just want some security. That will help her not change from being the woman you married. So work hard to take care of her needs. If men find your Filipino wife attractive and know there is a large age gap in your marriage like ours, some unscrupulous ones might try to woo her with their words about her beauty. Anyone can do that. I certainly compliment my wife on her body, her looks, but no one is going to continually compliment her on her character the way her husband does, the way I do. Other men only want her for what they can see right now, but my wife knows that I realize her character is only likely to improve over the years, and the relationship I am working to build and sustain right now should continue to grow stronger. In other words, she is becoming more beautiful to me all the time. And we've been married 3.5 years now. In fact, her birthday is tomorrow. I have a little video about that coming out tomorrow. Another thing you can do is avoid being excessively frugal. And one has to be careful here because there could be a fine line between being smart and frugal and being miserly and restrictive. Like I said earlier, it's expensive to live here. And especially if she's not working yet, and it's going to take her a little while to get her, green card, social security number, and get a job. You probably will be supporting her and you yourself. But being stingy could have the effect of your Filipino wife being swayed by the negative talk of others to think that the grass is greener on the other side. She might be hearing about her coworkers going here and going there, doing this or doing that, and not be aware that they could be in debt just to do those things. You want to marry a Filipina that gives you no reason to believe she is materialistic. And yes, a Filipina can be materialistic. Just being from a poor country doesn't mean that they aren't materialistic. I guess somehow that'll just have to come out when you talk to her. I could tell when I talked to my wife before we got married that she took good care of her clothes. She wore them, over and over again. She wanted to provide for other people in the family. She was used to not being, focusing on spending money on herself. And thankfully, she's still not materialistic to this day. There will and should be somewhat of an expectation that being in America, she will have more means than she was in the Philippines, of course. The biggest reason she married a foreigner is to provide a better life for her family and herself. Now, this should not be a turnoff, but it's just reality. And the sooner a foreigner understands that her situation is different than his. She married a foreigner because she desperately wants to provide for her family. However, she wants to be a great wife and can be the best wife that you ever had. So don't let that money thing get in the way. I think it's commendable that my wife married me. I want to help her. She didn't exactly know everything I had before we got married, because she also wanted to be a great wife. She still wants to be a good wife and marry a good husband. She will likely be frugal, but I think you should also help her to experience things she would, like to do and like to have. My wife wanted to travel to some places in the Midwest of the United States where we live, so we did. One day I even asked her, anywhere in the world, hon, where would you want to go? Just for conversation. And she said Paris. And then a few weeks later, I actually thought about, asking her to go to Paris. Do you want to go to Paris? She said, no, of course, too expensive. But we found a way. And, you can only do that maybe once in a lifetime. And that's something we did together. And she was able to enjoy that she would never, ever dream of being able to do in the Philippines. We could get the money, so we didn't have to go into debt, to go to Paris. I could have lectured her on the importance of being financially responsible, but there will be a tension between that and holding on to so much that she won't be able to feel like she's able to experience some things of interest to her in America. I was fine not going to Paris, but if my wife wanted to go, then I wanted to go and enjoy it as a couple. We both loved it, actually. Even if we didn't do something like that again, she will always remember it and that I offered to take her there. Some people like to assume that every woman will leave her husband if he can't provide a lot of financial security, to be rich even. From what I've observed, I don't think that is always the case. I believe most women just want to not have to worry about security in the future. Yet at the same time, she doesn't want to be restricted, to being at home. I will talk about this some more later when I bring up another item to help your Filipino wife from becoming Americanized. To balance this out, I think it is important to tell her that you appreciate that she is frugal. It could be disastrous to tell your Filipino wife that now she lives in America, she is going to have the best of things that you don't want either one of you, to be cheap. Even if you are very wealthy, I believe you should still want her to be frugal because she, that's just the way she probably grew up and out of necessity, yet still she believes that's the best way to live. Praising her for this, for little ways she tries to be resourceful and for trying to find sales will go a long way to letting her know that her husband appreciates this value of hers. Since we've been married, I really do appreciate the many ways she tries to help save some money, and this is something you need to let her know. In fact, I've kind of picked up on her resourcefulness myself since I've been around her. Another thing, one of many here, have a financial plan for your future. This helps her to know that you have a long range view for her future and yours together. Doing this can help her not give in to the temptation to look for someone with more money, as some people assume she will do. My wife has met with our financial advisor, and multiple times I've talked to her about where our money is as far as pension, 401k, checking accounts, how Social Security works when I retire. And after I die, when she is 60, she can apply for my full Social Security. although that'll be 30 years from now. This should take pressure off her if someone tries to put thoughts into her mind that she can do better. Maybe financially she can, but she married you, and you need to do all you can to help her not worry about finances. There's many couples on YouTube, Filipinas and foreigners. They're not wealthy. I mean, in the States or outside of the Philippines, and they seem to be content and happy. Our financial advisor gave us a link online where we can log in and see where all the money is all at one time, everywhere in real time, which is pretty cool. I've looked at it maybe once or twice, and I wouldn't be surprised my wife has never looked at it. She's either impressed with how we're doing or just isn't into, making money or being wealthy. I'd like to think she is just satisfied knowing that we have a financial plan that can help give her some comfort. The Filipina you marry will probably be accustomed to living one day at a time when it comes to financial matters, and might be satisfied with a husband who she knows is working to give her some financial security. Hi, David. I think it's very difficult for a Western woman to match a typical Filipina. Not trying to bash anyone, but the culture just tend to produce different outcomes. Yeah, that was my experience. I got more than I was looking for, actually, but she's frugal. She's still frugal. Filipinas make great wives. That's why I married one. That's why I had this channel to show other people the value of Filipinas. If you make a good choice, your single days hopefully will be behind you, and you just can make a great choice in marrying a Filipina. I agree, but there is a fear that this woman will become Americanized and change. And some people say it's guaranteed. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. They keep throwing on the years and saying it will happen. But I'm here to say that they don't know that. There's things that you can do. You don't want to neglect her, but if you do some of these things, the more you do, the better. Be a hard worker. Get extra hours possible if you are not retired. Her knowing that you are making a priority of earning income should be good enough for most women and probably for most Filipinas. Sitting around watching sports on television or spending a lot of time on the internet will not. I have worked 6 days a week for decades, I suppose, with the extra day being overtime. A wife should appreciate this, along with other things in this list that help her to see that she has a good thing going. Of course, you don't want to be a workaholic, just someone that, because then you'll be ignoring her, just someone that she knows is toiling away for the two of you. You want to work hard, but not so much that it greatly limits your ability to do the next thing on this list. And that would be do activities together. This should be self-explanatory, but I mention this so that she feels like you are invested in the relationship. If she feels you're invested in the relationship, there's no need to be looking anywhere else. I think a Filipina would stick with you if she feels like you were invested in her. She's not looking for a perfect man. She's looking for a stable, loving, kind, considerate husband. If the foreign man somehow is thinking that since he has won this great prize in marriage, who should just be glad she is out of the Philippines and has it so much better than before, I think that is a recipe for complacency, and that could unwittingly crack the door open for someone to plant wrong ideas in her head. Let's just assume that there will be someone or some people trying eventually to wrongly influence your Filipina wife. Do things together, go on dates together. Every other Tuesday, we go to a movie, if there's one worth seeing. And that's just something to do and something to look forward to, something to help avoid, getting bored if we stay home too much, like we usually like to do. My wife is a big LeBron James fan, so we've watched some of his highlights on the phone, on YouTube, and even a full game a few years ago. And she's gone to college basketball games with me, even a football game, but she's not really into football. She has watched some with me on television. Hopefully this week she can watch some of the Ohio State game with me because she's not working. At the game she went to, there's an Oregon game 2 years ago, maybe. We were there in person, and our team won. We got a sack late in the game to preserve the win. The crowd of 90,000 was going crazy. I looked at my wife. What was she doing? She was, tapping away on her phone and ignoring the game. But I should add, this isn't easy for me, but to be willing to try things you haven't done before, like places to eat or places to see. She was uncomfortable going to the game. She said it was too hot, too crowded. Sounds just like the Philippines, but that's what she said. But she went. She got out of her comfort zone. So I've learned to get out of my comfort zone and do some things with her. For example, plays. She likes to go see some plays. There's a Lead Center for Performing Arts. We went to see, we saw some Cinderella, I think it was. And, to be honest with you, I kind of like those because there's some really talented performers in those things. Materialism can happen because of not having access to nice things, and getting nice things can be symbolized not being poor anymore. It's not so much the things, but the situation that she wants to see has changed, like being able to afford nice things. And you should be able to give her, some things that she hadn't have, but that's true. Not having access to these things can, make somebody feel like they've arrived. Hopefully your Filipina has a good head on her shoulders and realizes that money can't buy happiness and things can't buy happiness. There's a temptation for Filipinos to come to America and show off the things that they have. And, I guess you can't fault her for being happy that she can afford some nice watches or some nice purses or some nice shoes or, clothes. My wife has a good head on her shoulders. She won't go spend too much. She tries to get by with as little as possible when she goes to the store and finds good looking clothes that don't cost too much. But I'm not worried about her becoming materialistic. She has, she doesn't want to be living high in the hog while her family is, struggling in the Philippines. So she'll gladly sacrifice for them, just as she always did before she got here. But I do want to treat her, to some things. And I don't try to restrict her what to do with the own money she has. Once in a while she'll buy something, but I don't have to look over her shoulder and look at her checking account. I have her checking account here and say, sweetie, what's this for? And why did you have to do this? And why did you have to buy that? I trust her, and she's going to be okay with that. Another idea, let her build her nest in your home. You'll want to do things for and with your Filipino wife that encourages her to invest herself in your relationship. One of those things would be to pretty much give her the oversight of how your place is going to look. In all likelihood, she will have different ideas of, color scheme, how to decorate, where to put things. She will do things differently than in the home you grew up with and in the way you did things before getting married. It may be a blend of the way her place was in the Philippines and what she envisions your place together to look like. I see no reason why to not defer to her in this area, which may be more important to her than to you anyway. Family is already starting to call. My wife won't be home for another hour and a half. My wife likes to watch those shows on television where renovations are done. She likes to watch with my mother. She watches YouTube videos on how to decorate. She is naturally organized, which I love about her. She picked the colors to our basement where we spend most of our time. She decided where the furniture goes, where the television goes, rearranges it. I want her to know that this is her house. She belongs here. I don't see any need to interfere and insist that we have things lined up by my preference. She has a vision for how we could renovate our storage room, for what we could do in the garage to help with storage. If I were to insist on my way, this just potentially sets her up to be contaminated with feminism because other women could tell her that I am trying to control her and being unfair and so on. And we will have to turn this phone off. There it goes. I almost never do that. Another idea you can have is to talk with her family. Not everybody is comfortable with this. And I don't know why a Filipina would emotionally leave her Philippine roots being married to a man who talks to her family, who makes an honest attempt to do so. She likes this. She can always find someone who isn't interested in her family, who isn't interested in learning some Filipino words, who isn't interested in basically knowing how they're doing, to be disinterested in talking, texting with her family, even a little bit, would cause resentment, but could also give her the notion that she could look for someone else. This area is important, even if it's just waving or saying their name. When my wife is doing a webcam with her mother, I make sure to sneak in with a big hug and a kiss to show mama that I love her daughter very much, and say hello. And sometimes I'll say, hey, hon, tell your mother this, and then she can translate, because most of her siblings aren't comfortable speaking English, but it's very important. Your wife will find it very sexy if you care about her family and attempt to communicate with them. Another thing is to love her family. It isn't possible to say you love her without doing something tangible to show it. Personally speaking, helping my wife's family with some financial needs is a great way to show her that I love her family. I can't just say that I love them and not do it. Does it always have to do with money? In some cases, no, but in many cases, yes, it does. To show them love is to meet whatever need they may have that you are able to meet. To help prevent your Filipino wife from becoming Americanized, to think about hypergamy, to start to develop habits that are different from what she is used to, loving her family is a good way to keep her with you, to keep her loyal to you. So in a sense, you kind of keep pursuing your wife even after you're married, just like you keep dating her even after you're married. You don't want things to go stale just because you have that ring on your finger now. I get the impression when we've been in the Philippines that sometimes my wife feels like I am avoiding her family if I would rather stay in the air-conditioned hotel room or take a nap. I tell her the heat bothers me, and I'm tired, but I also want to go with her to her families at least once a day. Another good thing you can do is memorize as many names of family members as possible. I pretty much had those memorized, before I married her, so I could start asking her about her family. And some of the names are not what you're used to hearing. So they could be easier or harder to remember, but they probably are unusual. Another little item here is help her grow as a person. The next three are things that you might be tempted to think will help set her up to leave you, but they should have the opposite effect. If you trust her, and that could be yet another point to list here, I have a video on trust I'm going to do eventually, you will want her to be successful in any way possible, especially if you have a large age gap. If so, you know that she may live a long time after your death, and you want to help her put herself in a position to be successful in life. If, while helping her grow and flourish, you are the type of husband I try to teach about on Love Beyond the Sea, she would want to stay with you and not be influenced by harmful outside influences, because you want to help her grow as a person. We send what we can, and she always says thank you. It's not necessary to every single time, but she always does. Well, she appreciates it, and the fact that you respond to her, that's a good thing. And this is part of the deal of marrying a Filipina. You marry a great woman, and the money thing is important. It should not keep you from marrying a Filipina. But again, we can't get into that here. But you just need to talk about these things ahead of time. But certainly don't put your foot down and say no money ever going to her family. That would be the kiss of death in all likelihood if you could help, but did not want to help. Now, how have I tried to do this, help my wife grow as a person? At one time, my wife was considering some schooling, perhaps at a community college nearby, and I would have supported her in that. I did what I could to help her find a job. I have encouraged her at work to try to develop her computer skills even more because that's something she's good at. It can help her on her job. She's mechanically inclined, so I have encouraged her to learn different jobs at her current job that could help her group and help her out. I taught her to drive. I encourage her to attend women's events at church, and she recently went to a conference with some women from church. If I see something my wife does well, then I try to encourage her to find a way to use it to help others. She is good with children, so I have encouraged her with that. I want her to grow socially too, and since she is on the shy side, I have to be patient. You can also help her find good friends. That's another thing. I have a video about that, but I haven't released it yet. Probably will on Tuesday. You can't control who she will come across, but you can be aware of potential women that could be a good influence on her. I found a married Filipina a bit older than my wife with 3 children who has been a good influence on my wife. I had asked my pastor if he knew anyone who could help with this. And when my wife arrived here in January of 2015, and this woman, I called her husband, explained the situation, and he said, sure, I had us over for movies and dinner, and they've been friends ever since. There was a woman at church who was a little bit older than my wife, but she and her husband just moved away recently because of his job. But I do pray for this because it's important for her to have good friends. If your Filipina has the right kind of friends, she is less likely to be victimized by becoming Americanized. And actually, I'm quite impressed with the friends my wife has back in the Philippines. If you can possibly meet your wife's friends in the Philippines before marrying her, that's a good indicator of what she'll be like. I wish it were always possible to get to know her friends back home. I've met them on 3 occasions that I've been in the Philippines, and I've told her since we've been married that she has good, clean, wholesome friends that I can't believe aren't married. Maybe they don't, want to come to America, but they aren't Americanized or Westernized. And by complimenting her on her choice of friends, I am reinforcing the kind of values that will help her remain a committed wife while retaining the characteristics that attracted me to her in the first place. And I kind of touched on this earlier, helping her find a job, be active in helping her find a job. This will take a lot of pressure off trying to not be too frugal. Sure, if she works, she could be subject to being influenced by someone with feministic views, but unless the foreign man is loaded, she will need to have a job and she'll probably want to work anyway. Having a job will allow her to help her family a lot. If she doesn't work, she'll get bored, and who knows, that could influence her to deviate from her usual nature. If she isn't allowed to work, she could give in to other people telling her she's being treated poorly, and she might rebel. Phil's to Phoenix. Hi. Thankfully, there is a large and active Filipino community here in Phoenix. Cindy was able to become involved with. That's great. I'm happy for you. I'm not sure we have that here in Nebraska. There might be something in Omaha, but it's 60 miles away. But that's good. That helps her feel more comfortable being away from home, and something that you guys can do together, yet something else, that you can do together. If the man is in a situation where he has enough income that she doesn't have to work and he is able to help her family sufficiently, then that would be different as long as she has enough fulfilling things to do during the day, have to keep her busy. Even so, she still might refuse to not work, and I would lean towards letting her work. After a while, if she feels that it is too much of a hassle, then she would be able to stay at home. But the key here is that she be allowed to work. Working also assumes you will need to teach her how to drive or have someone else do that. But I think it would be better to do it with her because that is just another activity you can do together and look back upon later and laugh about it, even though there will probably be some tense moments, like there always is when you teach your wife how to drive. Also, another point here, learn not to control her. Some people are just more controlling than others. Just advising here, try not to do that. I have a video called There's No Need to Control Your Filipina. If she has been working to support her family in the Philippines, again, she probably will want to do that in America. It is likely a source of pride for her. Disallowing that might be a source of conflict. If your Filipino wife is much younger, then it is possible there is more potential for conflict in the area of her feeling like she is being controlled. That is because the man could think that she should always accept what he says, since this is his country. He knows the lay of the land, is wiser, and makes more money. Controlling could be in, how she dresses, whether she wears makeup or not, her hairstyle, eating habits, how much time she is on Facebook, how she decorates the house, the music she listens to, how frugal to be, how she washes the dishes or the clothes. My wife tended to kind of really load up, dishwasher and the clothes washer and dryer, and I think she still does, but I usually do it most of the time now. But that's something that we argued a little bit earlier. Don't overload it so much and stuff. Now I just, if she does it, she does it. I'm not going to talk to her about that again. It could be how she decorates the house, the bathroom, the food she cooks, and 100 more things. If something is of dire importance to the man, then they need to discuss it. But what the older foreigner has to keep in mind is he is not her father, neither does she want him to be. She is his wife, his partner. If you are interested, I also will link a video called Husband or Father Figure to your Filipina wife. You could also see the playlist called Younger Wife. Another source of conflict can be how much money you will need to support her family in the Philippines. If the foreigner is stingy here or insists that no money will be given, that very well could lead to her going off the rails and starting to listen to the feministic influences she might be exposed to. This is a good time in the video to say that when men criticize a Filipina for becoming Americanized, I think he always needs to be aware of how he can positively and negatively impact that. The purpose of this live stream is to show men a lot of ways he's able to keep or help prevent his Filipina wife from becoming Americanized. There are things he can do to keep her grounded and faithful, and I'm detailing quite a few of these, and they're not really complicated. If he is the opposite of these, then he would be part of the problem with her changing her attitude. Filipinas will become Americanized is a myth. They might, especially if they are predisposed to it, so choose wisely. But I believe that the husband has enough influence to prevent this from happening. Now, let me exaggerate this to make a point. If this Filipina's husband is controlling, spends ample time with his friends or in a hobby, thus leaving her alone, is suspicious of her working and making friends, talks down the Philippines, refuses to try Filipino food, doesn't communicate at all with her family, then he would have a lot of audacity to blame his wife for becoming Americanized. In my videos, I've always alluded to or stated that the man needs to take responsibility for what happens in the marriage. He is the CEO of the marriage. He needs to find solutions to problems. He needs to work to keep them from happening or worsening. He isn't perfect, but he doesn't have to be. He needs to be discerning enough to know that in America there are a lot of negative influences, such as feminism. His new Filipino wife very well might hear some things from women with bad intentions to get her to become enlightened. Men might get in her ear about being married to a much older man. If he can do the things I am listing here, he is helping immensely to lessen the likelihood his Filipina will succumb to becoming Americanized. Another thing to be aware, don't be overprotective, because she will resent it if her husband is overprotective. And this is similar to the previous one about control, but the difference is that being controlling is more absolute or total, whereas being overprotective allows for more freedom, but has an element of distrust or giving the impression your Filipina wife is not capable. One example would be if I refused to allow my wife to learn how to drive. It's one thing if she has poor vision or bad reflexes, or it's just too small to drive the car. But it's another if there really isn't a good reason for her not to learn to drive, but I won't allow her to. I am always cognizant something could happen to my wife on the road, so I frequently remind her to drive safely, look both ways when she is the first car in the intersection, and to be careful on ice. Recently, someone was killed in a nearby intersection here, and a guy at work almost lost his wife and daughter when a 17-year-old went crashing through an intersection at 50 miles an hour and struck their car. I would wrap my wife up in bubble wrap if I could keep her safe that way, but I have to trust her to drive for her to be able to work and go places, especially when I get older and I can't drive anymore. An exception I could see is if you live in an area of very heavy traffic, which is just generally dangerous. I can understand you saying, "Hun, I'm not sure this is a good idea." The same thing could apply to your Filipino wife wanting to work. You might think she'll get interest from other men, get wrongly influenced by other women, and those are potential risks. If your wife handles them well, then it's not going to be an issue. Being sheltered is not a good thing. You can warn her about what might happen at work, but she won't grow if she is not allowed to learn from certain experiences. And I think this would cause resentment. And this could also apply to being overprotective about her friends. You should be able to trust that she has the sense to avoid the wrong type of women for friendship. Unnecessary restriction on what she does with the money she earns could fall into the overprotective category. I can talk to my wife about what I consider wasteful and unnecessary, but I have to be able to trust her to learn to make good decisions. After all, if she works in America, she will be making money hand over fist compared to the Philippines. And like the rest of us, will learn how to make good use of it. And we all spend some money frivolously now and then. Another way to be overprotective is with the clothes she wears. If you married a younger Filipina, you won't want her to dress like an older woman. At least I don't. I mean, I want her to shop at the stores for younger women. We've gone to those stores together. I don't even mind sorting through the clothes with her or asking help from the salesperson. Maybe I'm just showing off a bit, but I don't want her to dress like a slut, and neither does she. She has good sense. I don't want to force her to wear clothes that I consider a turn on, although I do tell her what those are, and sometimes I buy them myself, and sometimes that has caused a little bit of conflict. To be controlling would be to insist she dress a certain way or to prohibit her from wearing certain clothes, and to be overprotective would be to harp on what not to wear and to overstate your preference for certain clothes. Another thing that would be overprotective would be to always want to know who she's texting with or messaging with, as if you didn't trust her. If you attempt to restrict her ability to make certain choices, then you run the risk of her becoming Americanized by virtue of her becoming open to the words of others who are not responsible for her and who don't care about her as much as you do. David Benkendorf, I am protected because she was new and had a learning curve, but it did make her feel like I didn't think she can take care of herself. Yeah, David, that's been something I sensed about my wife before I even brought her over here, was she wanted me to know that she was very capable. And if I just try to suggest something, she would get upset a little bit. And it finally took me, several months to realize, why does she always act like that? And finally I thought, you know what? I bet she thinks I don't trust her. I'll bet she thinks that because she's a woman from the Philippines, developing country, that she is not capable or qualified. And she's never said that to me, but I do believe that that's the way she feels. And so I have tried to make it a great point to emphasize to her the things that she does well, and to emphasize to her how much I appreciate that, to encourage her to try other things because she is capable. And when she gets here, it's probably easy to be overprotective, and you have to use some discernment because you can't throw her out to the wolves. She's not ready for everything in America right away. So you kind of just have to work with her and work through these things together. And there will be some tension, I guess, as you let her go and try different things, let her out of the nest a little bit. But being overprotective or controlling, that's definitely not a good thing to do. A good thing to do would be to be committed to her If your wife knows that you are 100% committed to her, then she is less likely to give into to temptation to be influenced by someone who tells you you are too old for her or she could do better. She's being oppressed by her husband. She should go her own way, and so on. And I did a video on ways I show my wife I'm committed to her. I will link that also. One thing you can do, which isn't easy, is learn to speak some Filipino, at least some words or some phrases. And I will approach this from the opposite side. The foreigner who shows absolutely no interest in learning any Filipino words or phrases is sending the message that he is not interested in her culture, and the subtle message that he might not be completely invested in her. That may not be his intention, but that might be the way she sees it. If you know that she will respect you for trying to learn a few words, and you know that now since I just told you, then to be disinterested in that will probably hurt her feelings. Learning some words and phrases can only help bring you closer together. And anything that can do that will help prevent her from becoming Americanized. I will link a video to that as my wife patiently endures trying to teach me some new phrases. Also, just in general, treat her well. I shouldn't have to say this, but I mean, I'll say it. Don't get complacent. Always try to keep treating her well. I have a series on how to earn your Filipina's respect. I'll link that too. My thought here is, why would she be swayed to adopt liberal American ways if she feels safe and secure with her husband that treats her well? I'm not suggesting you have to live in fear of her becoming Americanized by suggesting these ideas, only that by treating her well as possible, it will be more difficult for outside influences to have an effect on her. Also, and this won't be for everybody, but you could consider retiring in the Philippines. One thing this does is limit the time your Filipino wife could become contaminated by feministic ideas. If you have plans on retiring in the Philippines, then her thoughts will be on one day being with her family again and their friends again, and she's less likely to become Americanized because she knows she's not eventually even going to be here. Not every Filipino wants to come here and stay here. Her thoughts will be on going home again, not on picking up bad habits from people who are not Filipinized. I can't speak for all Filipinas in another country, but I would bet that most of them would prefer to live in the Philippines if they were just a little bit more financially secure. If their husband is open to that, I can only see that being good for her to retain her Philippine ideals and outlook on life, which foreigners find very attractive. Another thing I listed here was just engage in marriage talk. The reason I think this is important is that it shows you are committed to her. Talk about your needs, talk about her needs, talk about the two of you as being one unit. Ask her what she needs to feel safe and protected. When I dated my wife online, it didn't take very long for me to start talking about marriage, what I saw being married to me would look like. I told her I wanted to make her dreams come true, to protect her and provide for her. As we have been married now for about 3.5 years, I still talk to her about that. I reiterate my love for her and my goals and expectations of myself. As a husband, I apologize when I blow it and I say something wrong. I tell her I am to give up my life for her, to meet her needs. I also talk to her about the kind of wife I need, and I let her know when she pleases me. You could also, little trick here is ask, what are you thinking, feeling, believing, experiencing? And this will just help open her up. And this is a good practice, especially if your wife is not very talkative. A lot of Filipinas aren't all that talkative. What are you thinking, feeling, believing, experiencing? I can tell by her facial expression or her body language if something isn't right, but I think her preference would be to not say anything. And I'm definitely not like that. I need to sensitively ask her if something's wrong, if she's all right. Most of the time when I ask her how she's doing or how her day at work was, she replies with one word, good. I may have to ask her what good what there was good about her date. Saying to her, honey, what's on your mind? Sweetie, how are you feeling? My love, what do you believe about this? You know, honey bear, what are you experiencing right now? What's going on inside of you? What are you thinking? You know, like they used to say, penny for your thoughts. These are good ways to allow her to talk about something that is, bothering her. Life is so busy here in America. The days pass quickly. It can be a challenge to know how our wife is doing. Um, when the days go by like minutes, when you are showing an interest in her thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and experiences, she gets the message that you are keenly interested in her well-being. She'll know that any guys trying to hit on her are only interested in themselves, thinking they can turn her away from you. She will appreciate that she has it good with you. The more you can do to show her your commitment to her well-being, the less likely she is to be vulnerable to attacks from the outside, like feministic, individualistic, and selfish ideas. And I only have one more here before I recap them, and you can certainly make comments if you'd like. And this is attend the marriage conference together. I know someone that used to go every year to the same conference. This shows, your wife, that your marriage to her is important to you. She will hear words from others that will reinforce what you have hopefully been telling her. Keeping healthy marriage concepts in mind will help shield her from outside influences that attempt to minimize your relationship and the importance of commitment. David, I embrace the culture and food. We're always with Filipinos at church. I do fear her being too Americanized, but never really looked at doing these things as mitigating her Americanization. It could be a lot of things. Now, look, I mean, you can't rest on your laurels. Sometimes when a guy gets married and he just kind of starts thinking about something else, you really can't do that with a Filipina because she's so far away from home. And, there's other people noticing the dynamics of your situation. They might be jealous. Who knows? But we know this is real, okay? And I have yet to see a video on YouTube saying, here's what you can do to avoid this. All I've ever seen was it's going to happen. It's a guarantee. So don't marry a Filipina. Well, for a lot of guys, they would be missing out on the best wife they could ever have. So, I married a Filipina, and, we're still learning. That's where these videos come from, and they're to help other people. So, again, it's just too one-sided to say she will become Americanized. There are good reasons for her to be in America, and there are things a foreigner husband can do to minimize this risk. Finding a Filipino wife is a tremendous blessing, as many of us know. There's nothing better than a loving, mutually giving relationship between a man and a woman. My goal with this video has been to help encourage foreigners to consider that she isn't guaranteed to fall victim to feminism in America. She has to have a good head on her shoulders to begin with, and that's a topic for another video. The foreign husband must protect her from certain temptations, and to that end, I hope that you will find this video helpful. You may have to listen to it, over 4 or 5 periods or something. What I do if I have a long video, I just play it in the shower, play it when I'm paying the bills, or eating or washing the dishes or driving around, and I can go through a long video pretty quick. So I just wanted to get all this stuff out here in one place for everybody to see. I'm just as concerned as any man about my Filipino wife becoming Americanized, but have taken the initiative to see that it doesn't happen with my love beyond the sea. So let me recap these points here for people that want to speed ahead and see this. Here's a bullet point list of tonight's points. Above all, her husband is responsible to make a healthy and safe culture or environment for her. He can tell her that America may not be what she thinks it is, and don't pull any punches. Be upfront about your concerns about her becoming Americanized. Tell her why it's not good. Learn about and appreciate the Philippines. Listen to Philippine music together. Eat Philippine foods together. Watch Philippine movies together. I'm not saying you have to do this all the time. Keep up with news from the Philippines. Don't talk condescendingly about the Philippines. One day at work, a guy that's married to a Filipina said some things that really ruffled my wife's feathers, and she pretty much avoids him now because of some things he was saying about the Philippines. So no, no. Praise values that oppose becoming Americanized. Avoid being excessively frugal. Have a financial plan eventually for your futures. Be a hard worker. Get extra hours if possible. If you're working, do activities together, go on dates together. Ask her what her ideas would be for that. And maybe you're the one with all the ideas. I don't, but we're both homebodies. So it's hard for us to get out. But if you're the one that says, hey, I've got 10 things I'd love to do, then suggest those things to her. And maybe some of them can be traditions. Let her build her nest in your home. I mentioned, maybe I didn't mention it, but we're building a house in the Philippines. I've got 3 videos on that. The progress is coming along real well. I've just totally let my wife have control over what that's going to look like, everything. I suppose I could say, well, I'm living there too, hon. But it's up to her. I just let her have total control with that. Talk with her family, love her family. She'll find this very sexy if you're talking with her family, getting to know her family, helping her family, help her grow as a person. And you could help her find good friends, help her find a job, teach her how to drive. Don't control her. Also, don't be overprotective. Be committed to her. Learn to speak some Filipino words or phrases. She'll like that. Treat her well. I have the series on respect, how to love a Filipino wife, help with marital harmony. I'll link those below. You could consider retiring in the Philippines. Engage in marriage talk. Ask about what your needs are. Ask her what she's thinking, feeling, believing, experiencing, so she always knows that you always know what's going on with her. Filipinas don't often talk a lot. You can't always assume that if she's not saying much that everything is fine. Eventually you'll be able to tell when you've been married long enough. Okay, hon, what happened? But often you just have to ask her, what are you thinking, feeling, what are you believing, what are you experiencing right now? And then, and it never hurts to attend the marriage conference together. Those are 29 things. There's probably a lot more. They're just practical ways to show you and hopefully give you some confidence that there's no need to assume that when you marry a Filipina, she's going to change and leave you. I know that's a prevalent thought. I'm just trying to do my best to explain why I don't feel that way. I can say with confidence, my wife's not going anywhere. She's my top priority in life. It's not me, it's her. And I find that by investing myself in her, amazingly, the things that are important to me get done. My needs get met. So anyway, it might seem like cliches, but it really works that way. So I appreciate you guys for joining here. But since it didn't take 2 hours to do this video like I thought it might, I can certainly, if you want to talk about any of these or anything else, just please make a comment, leave a comment. We can, kill a little bit more time. My wife won't be home for about half an hour. I'm going to try to do these longer live streams when she's not here, so she doesn't think I'm avoiding her. So, James, Rodney, Phil's to Phoenix, David, glad you're here. I know it's a long topic, but people go to college for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And this is probably be about an hour and 20-minute video that can, just help people to know you're with a foreigner. Things are going to be a little bit different in how you go about your marriage, but these things are worth doing because a Filipina can make you an excellent wife. So if there are no comments, I will do what I can to get this thing uploaded with a new thumbnail. You may or may not like, but I found one I think would be appropriate for this video. And thank you for listening live. And I certainly hope you can continue to make some comments in the archive. I always check that later. Yeah, Phil's to Phoenix makes a comment. You know, his wife appreciates the opportunities they have here in the United States, but thinks we stress ourselves out too much chasing a buck. You know, I don't want the grind of living in America to affect my wife either. That kind of goes under the heading, do things together. You need to make sure she's not getting overworked or stressed out, because, you know, my wife is working anyway, like, 12-hour days. 44 hours a week is what it averages, but she likes to work overtime. So she could be working 55 or 60 hours a week, and she still likes to do cooking and cleaning and shopping, and she doesn't complain. Sometimes she likes to cut the grass. And but there are times I have to tell her to slow down, or, hon, you don't have to work overtime this weekend. Why don't you just relax? You know, find something else to do, because just, you know, you can make a lot of money here. And so, like anybody, she might say, wow, I'm going to work as much as I can to help the family or help us. And, you know, you can't have her work her fingers to the bone. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Phil's to Phoenix, because, yeah, things are not as restful. They're more stressful here in the United States. You know, work, 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 paying bills. My wife always laments how many tax dollars are taken out of her paycheck. She couldn't believe that, you know, when we got married. As soon as you're able. When do you think that will be, Phil's to Phoenix? Our timeline, best case scenario, 8 years from now, if I could work till I'm 65. I probably need to get off of some meds, you know, if I don't think I can get them in the Philippines. But right now, yeah, we're kind of planning on retiring in the Philippines. That will be a big move, but you know, she's giving me some of the best years of her life to live in a strange place like America, and you know, I figure I can give her the golden years of mine in the Philippines. And August or September of 2020, are you kidding me? You realize that's only about a year and a half away, right? 2 years, something like that. Do you know what city you're planning on living in? We would be living in Davao. That's where her family is. That's where our house is being built. And you know, next Christmas, not this year, but next Christmas, we'll be staying there, and looking forward to making some videos from our home, literally home away from home. But Davao City, Philippines is where I met my wife, and she is here. And I want to do everything I can to keep her the woman she is. So, you know, it never hurts to you know, compliment her and praise her on the things she does well, that you know, attracted you to her. And if you do this and you're sincere and you're consistent, there's no reason to think that she's going to think the grass is greener on the other side. You know, Filipinas don't seem to be as hard to please, you know, as women here. Your wife's taking her MBA, will be finished July. Dumaguete area. I've certainly heard of Dumaguete. I have no idea how far away that is from Davao, but a lot of people living there, so I assume it's a relatively safe place, and you know, decent standard of living. Davao is, I think, the third largest city. It's a developing country, progressive country, they call it. So that may be in our plans. Another reason not to worry about my wife becoming Americanized, because, you know, we may not be here at that time. So I hope these are helpful. You may have to, you know, go through the list a couple times, listen to some of the points. You know, I'm just trying to help. So hopefully this video has helped. We're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes. Hopefully every couple of weeks or so, I'll be able to do live stream. So thank you for your attention here and later, because I really want to help guys find a good wife. I hate seeing that guys are living alone, because that's no way to go through life, in my opinion. Finding more by living with less. Pastor Will Davis Jr. Yeah, simplification, that's always a good idea. Experiences over possessions. Yeah, possessions don't make you happy. And that's another thing about that. Filipinos aren't into possessions. I think they realize, growing up probably poor in the Philippines, that it's the relationship with their friends and family that makes life rich and satisfying. Yeah, they don't want to worry about their next meal or medical bills or having a roof over their head, but they really do value the importance of things, not of things, but experiential things, the little things in life, I guess you would call it. And we don't have a lot of stuff here. I tell my wife I hate clutter. If we can throw it out, let's throw it out. I'm not a minimalist by any means, but and hopefully that's something the foreigner can learn from his Filipino wife, is how to live happily, or happier with less. We'll have to see. Certainly in the Philippines, that's what we look forward to doing. Well, David, maybe you'll retire in the Philippines someday. You're awful young, though. You're probably one of the younger people that looks at my channel. Davao, well, they have an airport in Davao, so it's not all places do. Some places, you have to take other flights or a ferry or something like that. But I don't know. I don't know what to compare it to. Manila, to me, when we were in Manila, I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. Overpacking the buses and the jeepneys, and I always wondered how in the world those tires don't explode on those buses. They put 3 times as many people in there. And I remember one time we were in the bus, and I thought, what happens if my wife gets out and I can't squeeze past and get out too, and I don't get out when she does? And it's just crazy crossing the streets and everything. But my wife likes Davao. A lot of other people like Davao. They still feel safe there. So hey, if I'm still alive, maybe David we can hook up in Davao someday. Safer cities, in 8 years, Davao could be different. Right now, it's safe. Who knows? They'll probably have a couple new presidents since then, and hopefully, they get the place progressing nicely. Yeah, exactly. Manila is like an Asian New York City. It's got to be the most polluted place, simply just because it's, not a lot of, I think, regulations for exhaust over there in the Philippines. It's, you have to see it to experience it to really know what it's like. I haven't experienced anything like that in Davao, but we certainly didn't experience all of Davao. But that's something you can do. I was talking to a guy at work today. He was saying, I overheard you talking about building a house in the Philippines. He said, me and my wife have been thinking of maybe retiring in Costa Rica, where things are less expensive, and a lot of foreigners are moving there. And it may be that a lot of foreigners will continue to move into the Philippines as well. Well, Philippians, you'll have to go to Bukidnon. Did I pronounce that right? Bukidnon. And I hope to see, if I was in the Philippines, go to different islands and see different places, and go there with my wife. So thank you, gentlemen, and for participating. I appreciate your questions and your thoughts. on this topic. So there's some ways to prevent your wife from becoming Americanized. You want her to stay Filipinized, and I need a break. So I'm going to get back to loading this video up, and appreciate you guys being here. Till next time.